experienced a lot of bullying, physical, not just emotional, and really the crystals that saved me at that younger point. So I've always been into that sort of esoteric background, if you like. I really went through stress and burnout, working regularly 60-hour weeks.
Welcome to the Soul Awakening Academy podcast series. I'm your host, Anne-Marie Mayers, and founder of Soul Awakening Academy. The stories you'll hear are from our master spiritual life coaches and energy healers, women who have gone to the brink of burnout and found the spark within themselves to turn their pain into their greatest purpose. So sit back, relax, maybe grab a pen and a piece of paper as we share their vulnerable stories of adversity to strength, and maybe you'll take some practical skills and strategies you can implement in your life now. And for a thank you, if you want to tap into your unique spiritual purpose, join the 3-part masterclass series below and let me help you find your level of greatness. Okay, so welcome, Robyn. It's so lovely to have you here as part of International Women's Week. So we decided to extend it, not just today, because we have so many inspiring women who've trained with us at Soul Awakening Academy, that we thought we'd do it for a week, which we could do it for weeks, to be fair, because we've got amazing women like yourself who've come from, and corporate backgrounds, academic backgrounds, and experienced a major breakthrough like yourself. And they've just completely pivoted their life and really eventually you found a life that is meaningful and purposeful to you and your essence. So we'll share your story in a moment. I'll just read your bio so people kind of understand your background and what you do. So Robyn Lane, so the theme for you today is trauma to triumph, which I feel is a really fitting theme, seen as how now you're training in the trauma-informed practices, etc., and really helping people on that level. But Robyn Lane is a spiritual alchemist and is the founder of Crystal Stream, an online sanctuary for high-achieving professionals in stressful fields, specializing in trauma-informed intuitive energy healing and coaching. She empowers individuals to conquer stress, anxiety, and burnout with a holistic approach centered on emotional balance, self-love, and clarity. Robyn seamlessly combines spirituality, mindset techniques, energy healing, and neuroscience. As a former diagnostic radiographer and academic, she understands the toll of burnout firsthand. Infusing Neal's Yard's remedy products, Robyn advocates holistic well-being for mind, body, and soul. And join her in unveiling authenticity, embarking on a fulfilling journey of self-discovery, joy, and self-awareness. Well, that's a beautiful bio, Robyn, and I love the way that you combine like what you've experienced now into the way that you impact your clients. So just share with us your story if you feel kind of safe to do that, because it will inspire so many listening who it resonates with. So tell us what led you to do what you do now, really.
Well, thank you for that introduction, Anne-Marie. That was amazing. It sounds better when somebody else reads it out loud.
Perfect.
So I suppose my story, it starts from early childhood, where I experienced a lot of bullying, physical, not just emotional and psychological, but it turned into anxiety and depression. And it was really the crystals that saved me at that younger point. So I've always been into that sort of esoteric background, if you like. But as I've gone through into early adulthood, it's something that's followed me. And I guess from all that pain and the trauma of going through the bullying and anxiety, I started to come to realize that there's more to life than that, and that that external pressures do reflect our inner reality and our internal state. So as I've gone through life, I was a successful diagnostic radiographer, as I put in my bio, also an academic. And again, I really went through stress and burnout, working regularly 60-hour weeks and the rest of it, seeing some really sick people. But that burnout came as that wake-up call that I needed more than anything else. It took me down this deep rabbit hole of spiritual practices, and just learning to listen to what my body needs and what I need to do to overcome any blockages, and realigning myself with my purpose. And I guess my success now isn't about external achievements. It's more about that inner fulfillment and that alignment with what my soul wants me to do.
Amazing, yeah. We're going to go deeper into that because I know there's more juice in your story because we've spoken about it before. But it's interesting, isn't it? Because so many women I've interviewed this week and last week have said about burnout. And burnout can happen just with one incident and it just becomes too much over time. But quite often there's a history. There's a history that stems way, way back in childhood, and there's some kind of systemic history of somebody being thrown out of alignment from an early age
Mm.
that creates this environment that they tolerate for so long. And then there's this crisis and turning point. So tell us
Mhm.
a little bit more about what actually happened to you physically, mentally, emotionally, where you got to that point where it was just breaking point, and then how you made that transition.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I was getting towards burnout, I was having mental confusion. I just couldn't think straight, didn't know which way was up, down, if I'd come to a point or I met myself coming back, It's that sort of high alert state. It was almost like I've been walking on eggshells for maybe 7 or 8 years. It was this constant dread where I didn't want to get up in the morning. Um, I just had that feeling of unworthiness, but right down in sort of my my core of my being. Um, I had trauma and abuse at that point as well from a partner, and also from early childhood. And I guess managing through that, through counseling and traditional methods, just didn't work for me. So I really had to go into developing my own intuition and really listening to my body through mindfulness, and looking at my energetic body, not just the physical symptoms that I was getting. Looking at imprints left within that energy body, looking from my birth, even before birth, and in my current life experiences, and trying to overcome them, rewriting that story, because nothing's set in stone. And I guess a lot of that is inner child work, because a lot, as you've rightly said, it comes from previous experiences too. So sort of releasing that burden and that emotional baggage was really important, and is one of my tools that I like to guide my clients through, when they're navigating similar challenges. And again, I suppose I would say that it's my belief that the external reality will have a profound impact on your internal state as well.
100% agree with that. And just for the people listening, how bad did it get for you in your corporate life? I mean, I think I recall from our older interviews that you really just you physically couldn't even get up.
No, I was in bed. I didn't want to leave the house. It was really bad. It ended up where I ended up going off sick from work. It started off as a couple of weeks, and then in the end I couldn't even set foot back inside a hospital, a place there I've worked and trained for many years, amongst colleagues. And it's happened more recently as well. So it's still something that I can experience. In my most recent job that I had before I left, was that almighty fear that that I can't stand up and talk to people, when actually I know that's just a misalignment with what I'm supposed to be doing. And since I've waved goodbye to that, everything's perfectly fine now. Abundance is everywhere all around me, and I cannot say enough how important it is to just live in alignment with what's true to you and not everybody else.
Gosh,
Um,
such a powerful story that you've got to share there with your own lived experience and how like you know when you're out of alignment because the anxiety sets in, the fears set in, the kind of the nervous system is just so responsive to when your
Absolutely.
body is being thrown in a way that it doesn't want, in an environment that it doesn't want to be in, it doesn't feel safe. So you found a way to bring yourself back, which feels in alignment to who you are and the life that you want to live. Because look, you're here now, you're on an interview with me, there are no fears, you're
Mm.
speaking so beautifully and coherently, and your message is so powerful, it needs to be shared with people. And I've talked all week to people who have said, you know, they get to a point where they think, whose life am I living? Whose voice is inside my head? Who is driving me to live this life when it's not what I really want? It's fascinating, isn't it? How
Absolutely.
society pushes us and pigeonholes us into these stereotypical roles that just don't fulfill us.
Absolutely. And I think definitely that society has a big part on influencing us as human beings. Um, and actually, we should be listening to ourselves and actually standing up for who we are and what we want, even if that feels uncomfortable, because you don't go anywhere in life without feeling and stepping out of that comfort zone.
Hmm. Where do you feel, how do you feel that your childhood adversities played a role? This is a deep question. You might not be able to answer. I don't know, but it's just because there's been a theme that's coming up. Like, how do you feel our childhood adversities impact the way that we are as adults? And maybe the decisions that we make, the lack of boundaries that we have, the saying yes to things when we should say no, the staying in situations too long. How do you feel that, and maybe on a personal level, impacted your decisions?
Well, that's a big question.
It is,
I
I'm
just need a
sorry.
minute to think about that. Threw me off guard there. Um, I think um, for me, it definitely has an absolutely huge impact on adulthood and the decisions that we make. Even if that's subconsciously and not actually realizing that you have a trauma or a blockage from this life, from childhood, or even a parent's childhood, and that can be passed down through our generations. Um, and I think it's really about taking that time to discover your story and what really could be impacting you. And it, as I say, you may not know about it to start with, but actually, when you start to see recurring patterns and themes, you may start to look back and go, "Hang on a minute, what was that that's triggering that? Where's it coming from?"
Yeah, and I always think it's just a constant dance that we do with our kind of subconscious fears on our next level of growth.
Mm.
It's just this, I notice it personally, it's just this like it's like walking the tightrope. Whenever I want to kind of go to the next level, I
Mm.
am always conscious of this other part of me that
Absolutely.
wants to keep me down. So I just find it fascinating the way that we operate in that way.
I think because we're so multifaceted, it is absolutely fascinating. And when you start getting into it, when you think you've dealt with something, it's like an onion, isn't it? You just have to keep peeling those layers back to really get to that root cause and say, okay, I've dealt with this part, but there's another facet of it, and it's nurturing it and rewriting it so in a way that it doesn't necessarily negatively impact you anymore.
Yeah, and it'll always, we'll get triggered in so many different ways that stem back to that
Mm.
one experience that we've had. When you said earlier about this is the way that you like to work with people, tell us a little bit more about that. What are you finding the type of clients are that are resonating with you? What's their theme?
So for me, with the clients that I'm seeing, it is a lot of high stress environments, and they're going towards burnout, and usually it's to do with dysfunctional families or a childhood that was very similar to my own, sort of a broken family, the stepmom that was a violent alcoholic, um, and was quite rightly a nasty person. I don't even want to repeat out loud what she is. And I know there's still healing to be done there. But I'm seeing that in my clients as well, just in different relationships. And it's that where I'm going back to childhood with my clients to try and look at that scenario and rewrite that parenting story for them.
Hmm. Yeah, I hear that. Reparenting is such a big part, such a big thing that helped me also from my background, being adopted, etc. And, adopted life not quite working out the way
Mhm.
I think anybody had hoped for, but that reparenting of the
Mm.
cells when it's like, okay, what do we who do we want to model our behavior on? If people
Mm.
haven't had that, I did have great nurturing parents, but it's like whose behavior can we model? And that can be
Absolutely.
very difficult when somebody wants to change. Well, how do they know how to be? Because every behavior is pretty much learned behavior. So how would you say, when people want to reparent themselves, if somebody was listening thinking, wow, that sounds interesting, but what do they mean and how do you do it? How do you find it works for your clients?
For me, I tend to go on a bit of a meditation with them to try and find out who it is or what the family dynamics are, and go back to that moment in history, if you like, and then say to your inner child, to yourself, to trust and honor your own instinct and your own guidance, and look for that strength and wisdom, and then put them in sort of a bubble, if you like, and embrace that uniqueness and embrace that guidance to and meditate on that really.
Yeah. And I think like what's coming through for me is because I think I had a conversation, an interview earlier. We were talking on similar lines, and it was like, I find that like yourself, like when you've had something, somebody has done you wrong, there's an injustice that hasn't been laid to rest. And
Mm.
it's really difficult, I think, to just try and forgive somebody where there's an injustice and you've not had, let's say, justice hasn't been done, and that's how you feel. There's an injustice and the emotions are still wrapped up in that. It can be tricky to forgive.
Absolutely.
And I think like some people think sometimes like the spiritual work or the holistic work or personal development is all around forgiveness and acceptance and things like that. It is, but how do you get to that point? I just personally, I have found it a journey, a journey for me to get to that point where I can really appreciate the lessons that were delivered to me through through the pain and the trauma. I'm 47 and I've been doing this work for a while, and it's only now I'm kind of going, yeah, okay, that was wrong and that hurt a lot, and that wish it hadn't happened, but I can appreciate the lesson and
Mm.
my personal growth through it. But it does get, so anybody listening, it's not like a fluffy thing, is it, to go and work with somebody like yourself?
It's a deep work. I suppose a bit of a caveat is if you don't want to get down and dirty with it, you know, maybe it's not the work for you, but be prepared to, like you say, go on that journey and really dig deep and really want that transformation, because it's not an easy journey. There's going to be bumps in the road, but we're here to support you. We're here to really empower you to make the changes and look back, because as you say, forgiveness isn't easy, but there's lots of ways to get to that point that we can look at and explore.
Yeah. I think one thing that helped me, and share what's worked for you, but one of the ways that I started off was I couldn't bring myself at the moment to forgive the other person and really mean it. Just couldn't,
Yes. Yeah,
that was
I can
that.
relate to that.
Yeah, it's difficult, right? So what helped me was to forgive my own thinking,
Mm.
because quite often we can beat ourselves up or we feel bad about thinking a certain thing, or if we've allowed our inner critic or self-saboteur to run the show, as calling ourselves names or body shaming ourselves, or whatever it looks like. Sometimes a nice way to start to practice forgiveness is not necessarily outwardly to somebody else, but actually to forgive your own thinking and your own mindset.
Mm.
And it's like starting to bring forgiveness to yourself.
Absolutely. It's I think there's so many steps into sort of self-forgiveness and self-gratitude as well, and actually acknowledging that, yeah, you've survived, you've got this far, you're grateful for the lessons that this has taught you, and then it's a bit more of a process into that self-love, self-acceptance, and then you can perhaps forgive somebody else and accept that situation.
Yeah, and eventually that becomes the cherry on the cake if it feels like it's an important piece. But what do you feel is making the biggest impact in your work at the moment?
The biggest impact. Um, I guess it would be how much that I can support people is the biggest impact. I know that seems a bit cheesy, um,
No.
but I think if we all work together, as a collective, we can raise that consciousness level of collectively, not just of ourselves or one person. And I guess I want to try and have that ripple effect with everybody, because if you can just impact that one individual, then that will go to the next and the next. And um, it is about supporting everybody really. And it's all come from my own experience and that impact it's had on me.
Exactly. And there might be some people listening thinking, um, and I used to feel this as well in the early days, is sharing my story was embarrassing to me. I felt a sense of
Mhm.
shame of sharing it, and that people would look at me differently
Mhm.
and treat me differently. But that's not true. In this line of work, your story is your wisdom to wealth in a way, because it's the purpose that will drives you, number one, to do the work that you do. And your
Mhm.
story is the resonance that people will be attracted to, because they know that when you look at your client, they know and feel this person's walked in my shoes. They're not judging me.
Definitely.
They've been where I am, and they're a couple of steps ahead on their healing journey. And that's where they'll look to you for the guidance and their support. So the power is within sharing our stories, being open, being willing to go there as well.
Absolutely. It's been a journey for myself. I know I've done lots of energy healing since I was about 9 years old, and it wasn't until I can't even think 2018 or 19 I actually ventured into the coaching world. And to be able to sit here and now help and guide other people um is absolutely phenomenal. But I've done the work and I'm still going through it. It's a never-ending journey. So I know exactly what the clients are going through. I may not live their story, but I've got that relatable story, as yourself and every coach. Yeah.
Exactly. And another kind of, myth is that the coach or the healer needs to be completely healed. And I would say, flipping hell, I don't think I'm ever going to get to that point.
It takes a
I will
long
probably disappear, evaporate back to the creator. When that happens, I'll puff in a
time.
lightning bolt. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, of
Because
course.
this journey is about experience, isn't it? And there's this
Yeah.
constant unfolding of our consciousness and our evolution, and the way that
Mhm.
we're approaching life, and our mindset can shift, and we get rid of some beliefs and we create new ones and form different habits. We are constantly changing. And with that change, needs to be self-awareness, self-reflection, awareness of the past, awareness of what's happening in the here and now, and awareness of where we want to direct our
Mhm.
future as well. So if people think, oh my God, this is resonating with me, but who do I think I am to become that person? I would never ever do it. I think like yourself, Robyn, you get to a point in your life and you think, okay, I've got another X amount of years to potentially live this life. How do I want to feel? Do I want to feel dread when I wake up in the morning? Or do I want to feel like I'm making an impact in the world like you are now?
Mm, absolutely. And it can be a scary decision to make, but I think it's a decision that only you can make as that individual. And just know when you've made that decision, you're never alone. There's always somebody there that can help guide you and support you. And we want the best for you. We want to see you sort of in alignment with your purpose, in alignment with who you are, for that hormone harmonious and compassionate. Like my brain's elsewhere. I'm
Oh, I
thinking
know
of
all about hormones right
something.
now at my age. Crikey.
Yeah. So yeah, we're just there to collectively, I guess, not just me as an individual coach, but we're all here.
Yeah, I love that. I
Yeah.
love the fact you talk about collective energy, because it's scientifically proven about the collective consciousness and the impact we can have. When you said earlier about the space, that is so important. It's one of the like biggest key factors is the space that you create with your clients. I mean, it's also researched with GPs that one of the biggest impacts they have on a positive outcome for their client is the relationship they have with their patient.
Mm.
It's one of the biggest residing factors of the wellness journey the patient is going to take.
Absolutely. And I mean, speaking from an academic head and from my previous job as a radiographer, you may have a fleeting time, or you may have hours over months with a client, but all that matters in that moment is that client, and being able to hold that space is phenomenal. I can't say what it's like to hold a space to witness these transformations in people. Um, and it's about listening to that client. It's not putting thoughts in their head. It's not telling them what to do. It's about them coming to it with their own answers, but we're just there as a bit of a guide, I would say. Um, Again, just hold that space for them to find the answers themselves.
So, what's like landing with me is you really are a super experienced space holder, because no doubt you will have had to have delivered the worst news
Yeah.
to your patients and hold the space for them. And as you say, you can do that with a very limited time or over time, but you have probably, I would say, been able to really tune in and create an energetic container for clients,
Absolutely.
which is basically managing your own emotional state and having a kind of like when we say come in alignment, it's kind of like creating a resonance field. And that's what like an energetic container can be, is you change your emotional state and that kind of creates this resonance field to hold the other person
Mm.
if they so choose to feel it. They have their like
They've
um
got their free will too.
but the free will,
That's part
yeah.
of, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it's that container that you say you create. I get completely where you're coming from and the importance of being able to do that as well.
I mean, I'd also say that I'd definitely say my patient was the expert, but in the coaching world, and especially in my business, my client knows what they're going through better than anybody else. Okay, I've had a similar story and I know what worked for me, but I'm not about prescribing. I'm about sharing thoughts, about listening to what they want and how I can best, support them on their journey finding their answers.
Absolutely.
I mean, I've got many tools in my bag, but
Yeah,
they don't all have to be used.
exactly. And the essence of the gold that you bring will always remain the same, no matter what tool you decide to use or problem your client's facing. You will always stay true to who
Yeah.
you are on the core. What would you say you would like your legacy to be going forward?
My legacy going forward. Um, I would probably say is to have that collective effect, that ripple effect, to support as many people as I can, to embrace their authentic self, to live in alignment with who they are and what their dreams are, and just to contribute to a more harmonious society, really, live in a more compassionate world, because going through burnout is not fun. Um, Going through trauma is not a laughing matter,
Mm.
and people need help from people like myself, and certainly qualified therapists have a part in that, but sometimes they need somebody with a different tap.
Yeah, I agree. So, last question. Well, nearly last question. If you woke up a billionaire tomorrow, what impact would you like to make in the world? What would you still have energy and motivation to do or to change?
I would definitely still be doing what I'm doing, but I would definitely try and get into charities and try and help support them in any way that I could. just from a charitable point of view, because not everybody is able to throw funds at coaches and things like that. And I'd definitely start looking around, not just at humans, but helping animals too. So yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you, Robyn. What would you say, just for people listening,
Mm.
what would you say training with the Soul Awakening Academy, what impact has that had on your life and your business or your clients?
Yeah, so Soul Awakening Academy has been instrumental, I cannot say, in providing me with advanced training, tools, a really supportive community. I've deepened my own sort of understanding of spiritual alchemy, I'm going to call it, energy healing as well. I've enhanced my coaching a bit capabilities. I came with nothing. I started off doing an introductory course and I've gone all the way through, and I'm still learning with you now doing the relationship coaching. But it's not just on my business that it's had an impact, it's also on my personal transformation. I have gone from this shell of myself to being able to stand here now, or sit here now, and talk to you.
That's so cool. Thanks so much. And it's an absolute honor sharing this space with you, Robyn. Your
Thank you.
story is so powerful and it will help so many people. And I really
Thanks.
appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Thank
Thank you
you. Really
so much,
appreciate
Robyn.
it.
Lots of love. Lots of love.